So today is a very special day. It is the birthday of Swami Venkatesananda Ji, who was one of the leading and most prominent disciples of Gurudev Swami Shivananda Ji. And traditionally, because the 29th falls within our Christmas retreat, we have often invited disciples of Swami Venkatesananda Ji to speak when we've, at night satsang, when we've had our retreat in the ashram live. But when we've had the 2 online retreats, we invited Swami Vidyananda Ji to speak from Cape Town, and where it's an ashram of Swami Venkatesananda Ji. And Swamiji has been organizing this very special year, which is the centenary of Swami Venkatesananda Ji. And today, of course, it would be the final day. And so Swamiji will be speaking to us, partly, I guess, as a tribute to his guru, and partly to speak about the Bhagavad Gita, because I think if you've had an opportunity to look at some of the offerings on our retreat website from Swami Venkatesananda Ji, you'll see that he has written so many wonderful daily readings from many, many different scriptures, including the Bhagavad Gita. It's called the Song of God. So we welcome you, Swamiji. Yes, Hari Om Swamiji, I'm glad to see you. We welcome you. We're so happy to have you here. I think you're muted, Swamiji.
Yes, okay, now. So thank you so much for inviting us to be part of today.
Yeah. Well, we're very, very happy to include you. It's an honor for us.
It's an honor for me, actually. Ajnanatimirandhasya gananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Dhyanamoolam Guru Murti, Pujamulam Guru Padam, Mantramoolam Guru Vakyam, Mokshamulam Guru Kripa. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase. Om Sana Bhavato Sano Bhunakto Saviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vajitamastu ma vidvishavahi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. My prostrations to Shri Gurudev Swami Shivanji Maharaj, Shri Swami Venkatesananda Maharaj, and Swami Chidanandaji Maharaj, Swami Krishnandaji Maharaj, Swami Yoga Swarupanandaji Maharaj. Oh gosh, I'm so almost intimidated that Swamiji is also joining. I'm very honored that Swamiji is there with us. And again, my gratitude to Swami Amritarupananda Mataji to invite us to be part of the Christmas retreat, to include the birth centenary of Sri Swami Venkatesananda Ji Maharaj into the Christmas retreat. I also would like to thank Swami Yoga Swarupanandaji Maharaj and also Swami Padmanabhanandaji Maharaj, because they gave their blessings that the first centenary can be included in the Christmas retreat. So we're very grateful. It makes us very joyful indeed that this is happening. So I was requested to speak on the Bhagavad Gita, obviously, because that's the theme. It's sort of in the light of Swami Venkatesananda Ji's teachings or approach to the Bhagavad Gita. As we heard at the introduction, when Swami Venkatesananda Ji was giving the introduction to the retreat, she explained how the different disciples of Gurudev Swami Shivananda Maharaj have different approaches to that. So each one has their particular approach, which in itself is correct, one could say, appropriate to that particular person. And I guess even amongst the disciples of each of these disciples, there will be different approaches, and so it goes on and on and on. So many different approaches. I want to point out that I never met Swami Venkatesananda Ji in person. I joined the Ananda Kutia Ashram much later. So my introduction to Swami Venkatesananda and his teachings came through Madhya Yogeshwari and Swami Parvatyananda Mataji, who started our ashram here. And then, of course, reading his books and listening to innumerable recordings of Swamiji. So luckily I had, one of the tasks I had was to digitalize the talks, so that gave me opportunity to also listen. So it comes from that perspective. So now that I've done the disclaimer, I can go into the discussion a little bit. Also, what I found was that, and again, this is my viewpoint, there doesn't seem to be a particular approach that Swami Venkatesananda Ji Maharaj had. And this is one of the things that I have noticed, regardless of the scripture or even the topic that is discussed, Swamiji had the ability to look at the same scripture or the same topic from so many different angles. If one would look at the many years that he taught, you'll find so many ways in which he approaches. So to say this is Swami Venkatesananda Ji's approach to the Bhagavad Gita, I think that would be incorrect to say. So what I'm presenting is more sort of little themes that struck me personally from what I've read or heard him say. So Swamiji gave importance to the first chapter, and it struck me, maybe because I had this thought in my mind, that many of our Swamijis have also put a special emphasis on the first chapter. The despondency, the yoga of despondency. It says of Arjuna, I would like to drop the Arjuna bit from that expression, because it is our own despondency, which is a yoga. This is the amazing thing. We don't think of yoga in terms of despondency or any negative state. I think we can even take this first chapter, any negative state. It could be even the yoga of anger, the yoga of jealousy, the yoga of anything. The point being is that we often find ourselves in a particular situation which we can't handle. Now, the situation, we usually think outside is the situation. There's a situation outside, and I'm not handling that situation outside. But what are we really and truly not handling is ourselves within that situation. The real situation that we are not handling is actually our inner state. I often take this example. If my car should break down, for me, it's a huge problem because I don't know anything about cars. If I ask my mechanic, please, can you sort out the car? What will he say? No problem, Swamiji. The situation is the same, broken car. To one person, it's a problem. To the other person, it's not a problem. So the situation is not the problem. The problem is whether I have the knowledge to deal with that problem or that external situation or not. Now, if I don't have the means to deal with a situation, then the problem is in me. And so if we find ourselves in situations of conflict, it could be conflict because there's some quarrel, or conflict often of duty. That's of course what Arjuna finds himself in, the conflict of duty. When that happens, the actual conflict is not outside, the conflict is inside. This is one of the key things that Swami Venkatesananda Ji used to point out as a way to deal with conflict, is to ask this simple question: where is the conflict experienced? Or where is the anger experience? Where's the jealousy experience? Where is the confusion experienced? Where is the despondency experience? Where is it experienced? If we ask this question in the light of searching for truth, then we will realize it's within me. I'm experiencing it here in me. That is where the problem lies. And Sri Krishna actually directs the attention of Arjuna towards that, because at first, Arjuna does what we all like to do, is to blame the external situation for the problem, for the conflict, and philosophize about it, justify it. I'm confused because I shouldn't do this because of this. I'm angry because of this. We always seem to blame the outside, the world, the situation, and that deflects from a very important part, which is the inner problem. Now, the inner problem is actually the yoga, the start and the beginning of yoga. This is the important part. Swami Venkatesananda, the reply to a question, okay, now I want to be on the yoga path. Where do I start? So where do I start on this yoga journey? The simple answer is, there where you are. If I want to leave here and go to my room, where do I start? I don't start in my room. I start here where I'm sitting. I can't even say I want to start by the door. I'll make the door my starting point. I cannot. Why? Because I'm not at the door. I have to move from this place to the door. So again, but where I am now is my starting point. So whatever is our internal condition, that is the starting point. The starting point for Arjuna is also the despondency. It is his starting point. Only from that point can he move. He cannot move from any other point. And I think we often make this error that we hear the teachings of yoga, equanimity, tranquility, peace, not being affected. We hear all these things, and then we want to immediately jump into that without realizing what is my starting point. My starting point is not tranquility, it's not equanimity, it's something completely different. So I have to deal with that first. Krishna brings Arjuna to the point of being exactly where he is at first. So that is I feel that that's like a most important teaching, to be completely honest with ourselves where we are at truly right now. Right now, yoga is only a word. I am confused, I am angry, I'm this, I'm that, whatever our problem is. That is where I am, that is my starting point, and therefore can I face that? This is not accepting anything. Do I accept my anger? No, this is not about acceptance or rejection. It is what is. I am psychologically in whatever state I am right now. I have to recognize it, see it, and then I move from there. Then the moment I recognize that, the Bhagavad Gita can come alive. See, all the time when Arjuna is philosophizing and justifying his problem, no teaching starts. When does the teaching start? The moment he realizes a very strange thing. I cannot solve my problem. Now, it's only when we realize that we cannot solve our own problem that we are open to the teachings. But at what point do we become aware of the fact that we can't solve our own problems? Only when we struggled. So Swami Venkatesananda points this out as well. Surrender, means the same thing as realizing I can't solve my problem, can only happen when I've really tried. We cannot prematurely surrender. We can try it, of course, you can try to surrender, but again, it's just a trying. And after trying many times to surrender, you realize I'm still not surrendering. And at that point, when we realize I can't surrender, we surrender. Same thing. So surrender is something that happens when we've tried our utmost to deal with a problem. I'm confused. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm figuring out. At some point, I have to come to the realization, I don't know. I don't know. This is coming face to face with ignorance, avidya. Swami Venkatesananda had a lovely English translation of avidya. It sounds phonetically very similar. You have to listen carefully. I have no idea. Avidya means I have no idea. I have no idea about how to solve my problems. And what does Arjuna do at that point? Sri Krishna, Ji, please, I am your disciple. Please show me the way. So when we are in this inner state of realizing our own impotence, I don't know how to deal with myself, and I realize there's something, somebody or some scripture or the guru can teach me, then at that point there's a surrender, an openness, a receptivity to the teachings. That is when the teachings becomes liberating, a liberation. And what's most amazing, this is something that struck me right in the beginning of my path, that that starting point itself is the liberation, part of the journey of liberation. This is a very amazing thing. We don't think of it, but actually even what we would normally consider to be negative, actually if we tackle it, if we face it, try our best to deal with it, come to the realization I can't, then even that was part of the liberation. See, when Arjuna was not dealing with his problem, justifying, deflecting it outward, no Bhagavad Gita can happen, no liberation can happen. It is only when, by facing it, okay, I am confused, that's what he says, I am confused, I don't know what to do. Now, Sri Krishna, please, I'm your disciple. Then the liberation begins. So this Vishada yoga is part and parcel of the liberation. And I find that very liberating, because it means I don't have to try and hide my problems or cover them up or anything. I can face them, and I know this is a moment, this is a situation which I can use to grow spiritually. The key thing is to be a disciple, and I've got no clue what that means, to be honest. But Swamiji points out that this discipleship is very important. To be a disciple in relationship to the scripture or to the guru. Swamiji has mentioned, do not have the feeling so-and-so is my guru. Rather have the feeling, I am your disciple. Not you are my guru, but I am your disciple. Why? Because if you are my guru, I own you. I'm your boss. And if you as my guru, you don't behave properly, I'm going to dismiss you, which is what we often do to our gurus and teachers. No, I am your disciple. These are the words of Arjuna. He does not say, Sri Krishna ji, please, you be my guru. He says, I am your disciple. That is, you make yourself that which you need to be, a disciple. Disciple, of course, means there's openness, receptivity, and Swami Venkatesananda also pointed out the word disciple may come from the word discipline. So an inner discipline, not necessarily discipline in the sense of, get up at 4 a.m. and do all these things. There's also part of it, but discipline also means that which you study. It's not used, that word is not used much anymore, but what discipline are you studying at university? So self-study, self-understanding is discipline. The disciple tries to understand him or herself with the aid of the guru, or in our case now, the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita, of course, then can teach us, share with us, guide us onto the path of liberation. Liberation from what? All these problems, this inner state of confusion. Sri Krishna's immediate response is very interesting. The first thing he says, grieve not. Grieve not. Depending on what may be going on inside, we can adjust the words slightly. Maybe if I'm anxious, then maybe Sri Krishna would have said to me, don't worry. You all know that song, don't worry, be happy. And Swami Venkatesananda says, actually, we should even visualize Sri Krishna standing in front of us when we're having a problem. Don't worry, don't grieve. And Swami Venkatesananda points out that this is maybe the central teaching. This may be the central teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because he says it is mentioned in the beginning, don't grieve, and Sri Krishna repeats it in the end, and then in the middle also at certain points he repeats this, don't grieve. And apparently, there's a tradition in Vedanta, or an idea in Vedanta, that what is said in the beginning, what is said in the end, that is the central theme, that is the important message. The idea being, this message is like a thread in the whole thing. The idea is related like this. If you're in a house and you have 2 windows, and between the 2 windows, of course, is a wall. And if you see the face of a cow in the one window and the tail of the cow in the other window, what can you deduce is behind the wall? A cow. There's the head and there's the tail, and there must be a cow there. So there's a cow, the head is in the beginning, the tail is in the end, so the whole thing must be cow. So the whole thing about the Bhagavad Gita is don't grieve. Don't worry. How do we do that? You have to follow the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. We can't just say, oh, wow, I'm not going to worry anymore. It doesn't work. I'm sure you've all tried it. It doesn't work. But the Gita, then, of course, we have to follow that teaching. Sri Krishna is then teaching Arjuna how not to grieve, how not to worry, how not to be unhappy, whatever it is that we are seeking. Whatever it is that you seek to get, whatever mess we want to get out of, the Bhagavad Gita teaches us that. So grieve not. And what seems to be important is to realize that this liberation happens in life, through life, and in the very life that I'm leading. It is not that I have to lead some other kind of life in order to be liberated, in order to live a life of liberation or a life of yoga. The very life that I'm leading now is actually the way. Unfortunately, we have this tendency to divide yoga and life, our way of life. If we are in a household, we think the ashramite can lead a yogic life, not me. The ashramite thinks that the hermit, who lives alone, can live a yogic life, not me, because I've got so many responsibilities in the ashram, so many problems and this and that, and also other characters I rub up with, and so on. Not that anybody rubs up against, not that I rub anybody up. Of course, I'm quite innocent. There's others that are the problem. Just as in the household, it's not me that's the problem. Everybody else is the problem only. So, and then the hermit probably thinks, maybe it would be better to live in the ashram because at least there's someone to support me and someone to cook my food for me or whatever. So it doesn't matter where we are. The moment we experience problems, we have this tendency to think, the environment is not right. I have to be in a better environment. The only environment that is not right is this environment. There's no other environment to worry about. So if we really grasp this, that my life, as I'm living, the life that I'm living now, not necessarily because I might be doing some foolish things, of course, but the very life that I am, the position I am in, is the path of yoga. Arjuna, at first, he wants to escape. That is his first thing. I want to take sannyasa, he says. I want to become sannyasi, go away into the forest. And Krishna is against this idea. Why? Because the warrior in Arjuna is also going to go to the forest. What will he do in the forest? Will he really meditate? Or will he worry about what's going to happen on the battlefield? I wonder who's fighting who. I wonder what's happening to my brothers. I wonder what is happening, so on and so forth. The very problems that are inside us now, they travel with us. You can't leave your brain behind. It travels wherever you are going. That brain walks with you. So we cannot escape. Sannyasa is not an escape. So yoga is to be lived in the life I'm leading. And I cannot escape this. I remember once a Swami visited us and his guru told him, you thought you escaped your grandmother. Now that you're in the ashram, you've got 50 grandmothers. And it's true. This is exactly what happens. We can't escape anything. Whatever we have to deal with, we have to deal with. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the thing to deal with is our own mind. So it doesn't matter where we are. The same samskaras are traveling with us. They are in us. Those are to be dealt with. It is really up to God to decide where we should be. Should we be household life? Should we be in an ashram? Should we be a hermit? Let God guide us. Be open to God's guidance or the Guru's guidance in regards to that. That will be the appropriate thing. So these two themes seem to be throughout the Bhagavad Gita, this concept of sannyasa, renunciation, and yoga. And Sri Krishna very specifically points out that this sannyasa is not the sannyasa of a vow, but the inner state of mind. That in which all desire is renounced, and in which, of course, most importantly, egoism is renounced, which, of course, is not the easiest thing to do because it's the ego, of course, it's trying to renounce itself. And we do it, we try our best, of course, we should. But this renunciation is an inner state. And it is coupled with yoga. And that is, I think, what Swami Shivananda Ji meant by detach, attach. You all know his motto, detach, attach. Detach the mind from the objects, attach it to the Lord. It's his way of representing Bhagavad Gita's teachings. Essential, and Guru says it's the essence of all teaching. It's the essence of all religion. Religion means yoga. Detach, attach. Inwardly, there's a renunciation. It means merely the mind is not constantly thinking about whatever it is thinking about. It is not desiring this, therefore avoiding something else, resisting something else. And it doesn't remain in a vacuum. Immediately, it links with God. There's a very beautiful talk by Swami Venkatesananda Ji that he gave in the last year of his life in Australia on yoga and Christianity. And I like this analogy. I'm going to repeat the analogy. He says, this is 5 fingers, 4 fingers. We're announcing fingers, 5 fingers, 4 fingers, 3 fingers, 2 fingers. This is not no finger. This is the fist. So when we renounce all our inner, when this inner renunciation is happening, you do not remain in a vacuum. You do not say, you do not remain in there, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not this prana, and so on, and I'm not this buddhi. You don't remain there. No. Immediately, there's the realization, I am the self, I'm the Atman. So this yoga and renunciation is simultaneous. It's not really one thing after the other. It's only because we speak in language, and language is consecutive time, linear time. I can only speak. I can only say renounce first and then yoga afterwards. I can't say the 2 words together. I don't think anyone would, even myself, would understand what that word would mean. It would have a very strange sound. But actually the 2 things, according to Swami Venkatesananda Ji, go together. In other words, as this inner renunciation is happening, there's also inner yoga happening at the same time. And that we should bear in mind. So renunciation is yoga, yoga is renunciation. These 2 go together all the time. Liberation comes from renunciation, renouncing all our conditioning. As that renunciation of conditioning happens, immediately yoga will happen. Maybe the analogy, we can use this analogy. You have a light bulb, and around it you have many lampshades. Maybe so many lampshades that light can't even penetrate anymore. That's sometimes how our own lives feel. We feel like I'm so full of darkness. There cannot even be a light in me. I may feel like that. Now I do the inward journey. I've faced this problem. I do the inner journey. And then one lampshade after the other is removed. What will happen? Little bit of light starts shining through. It is colored. It is not pure. It is still colored by the shade. But little by little, it is removed. As the shades are removed, the light can come through more. And this we may be experiencing in our own lives, actually. We may not be so aware of it. That's maybe the problem. As when any kind of renunciation happens within us, maybe some conditioning we have let go of, some desire we have let go of, immediately there will be arising a little bit more peace, a little bit more tranquility, a little bit more calm, a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more love. All of these, and these words are actually synonyms, this will arise in us little by little. One shade, a little bit more light. But are we aware of this? Are we paying attention to this? This is the question. We should also pay attention to that. Swami Venkatesananda points this out, like if you sit for meditation in the morning and you feel a little calm and peaceful, how much do we treasure it? That we try to remain in it throughout the rest of the day? Or is it just like, oh, well, I feel good now, great, okay, let me have some coffee, and then we're back into our busy life. So we should realize that whatever little bit of peace we have gained, that is yoga. That is the yoga that is happening. And then, of course, we try to remain in that. So the sannyasa, yoga go together. And as we mentioned, yoga is in daily life. Daily life. Daily life means action. We are always active. Even when we sit for meditation, that is an activity. So constant action. And Swami Venkatesananda coined a term which I really like. He uses the word appropriate action in regard to this idea of dharma. Because usually we think of, or usually the translation, and so the problem is the translation, because there's no proper English word for dharma. Usually we would translate as duty, our duty. And of course, that's also correct. But he also uses this expression of appropriate action. What is the appropriate action now? In this moment? Of course, this is a baffling question, isn't it? If you ask this question, that is where the confusion often arises. And so it should. There's a lovely verse. I'm not so good at memorizing things. There's a lovely verse in the Gita where Sri Krishna says, when you are utterly confused, that's when you can get self-realization. When the mind is utterly rattled. Why? Because if we face that confusion and we realize, I have no idea, avidya, then you turn towards God, who's where? Within myself. And then let that God within guide the action. That is appropriate action, because that God within is the inner intelligence which knows what to do at any moment in time. Just as that inner intelligence knows exactly how much to increase the heart rate or decrease the heart rate. Just as that intelligence knows exactly which muscles, which nerves to activate and deactivate, and by how much, so that the muscles move in the appropriate way. None of these things we are doing. That same intelligence that enables this whole body to operate within itself, also that same intelligence knows exactly how this body should respond to the external situation. Because that is, of course, the key thing of the Bhagavad Gita, I think, is that Sri Krishna is pointing Arjuna not only to do what has to be done, but let that action be prompted by me, by Sri Krishna, by this divine intelligence. Sri Krishna, or God, or Brahman, is present in each one of us as this intelligence. Swami Venkatesananda calls it the intelligence, not the IQ, and that's not intelligence, as we can often see. Intelligence is that which brings a state of harmony within me, in this body-mind complex, mind also, and is that which brings harmony to the whole, to the situation I'm in. Because that is the workings of Dharma. It is always keeping everything in a state of balance, harmony, and tranquility. So that is appropriate action. That is really our Dharma, is this appropriate action. And this is a very uncomfortable teaching because there's no exact rules. You know, we like a recipe. You know, and it has to tell you exactly how many eggs, how much sugar, how many grains of sugar. We want it exact, black and white. Somebody give it to me black and white, then I know what to do. No, it doesn't work like that. Life is not black and white. If you look around, I hardly see black and I hardly see white. I see lots of shades of color. So what is the appropriate action that only the inner intelligence, which is a reflection of God, can know? That is what we need to discover within ourselves. That is most liberating. No more headaches. And that intelligence will operate through this body-mind complex according to this Dharma. And it will operate through that body, through that Dharma. Swadharma, according to Swami Venkatesananda, also means the characteristics that make that individual being that individual being. For example, what is the Dharma of a dog? Barking. If you tell a dog not to bark, you are going against its Dharma, actually. a dog must bark and it must wag its tail. That is what is his dharma, it's his characteristics. And that's the problem with pets. We try to make them into something that they are not. So each one of us has a swadharma, that which makes this mind-body complex unique, a little different from someone else. How do I know what is my swadharma? We don't really know. But the inner intelligence does. So link in with that inner intelligence, it will use this body-mind complex and its swadharma will be expressed. And I realized that that is exactly why Gurudev Swami Shivananda Ji Maharaj had such a variety of disciples who within themselves, attained enlightenment, but whose expression was so different. Because each one of the disciples had their particular swadharma. It's the same enlightenment. It's the same divine intelligence, but it's expressing itself uniquely through each one according to their swadharma. Sri Ramana Maharishi had a beautiful expression. He said, there are no jnanis. There's only jnanam. In other words, in English, there are no enlightened beings. Many different enlightened beings. There's only enlightenment. In other words, what we call the different enlightened beings, they are all established in that one enlightenment, in that one God realization. And then he says, we categorize these enlightened beings in different ways. That is only, he used the word karma. That is only their karma. So Swami Shivananda had a particular karma. Ramana Maharishi had a different karma, or swadharma. The same enlightenment expresses itself differently through the different characteristics. And in that way, these characteristics become divine. And that is divine life. Divine life is when the dharma of that particular person is illumined by that inner intelligence. And then every action is appropriate action. So we need not break our little head about what must I do, what must I shouldn't do, should I do this, should I do that? No, don't break your head. Only focus, try and discover the divine within and let the divinity within guide this body. It will do so appropriately. Then we become instruments. And we become instruments. And again, the analogy, all instruments are different. All the instruments are different. A pen will not do the work of a hammer. The problem. The pen remains a pen, the hammer remains a hammer, but each one is expressing yoga, appropriate action in daily life. And so then, whatever we do itself is liberated. You're not liberated from doing it. You are liberated from the distracted and the unhappy mind, the confused mind. That is what we are liberated from. Because then we are the liberationists, when this renunciation has happened, and then with that the yoga has happened, and we will then continue living whatever life we live, but in a liberated state, in a luminous state, in the state of being one with the divine. So these are the few thoughts that I thought I could share with you. And again, I want to thank Sri Swami Yoga Swarupananda Ji Maharaj, Swami Amritananda Maharaj, and Swami Padmanabhananda Ji Maharaj for inviting us to be part and to give us the wonderful privilege and honor to be part of this platform. Thank you very much. Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Sadguruvana Ki Jai.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. That was a wonderful talk and so methodically and clearly shared with us. I am sure those insights that you have gleaned from the wonderful teachings of Swami Venkatesananda Ji will be of immense help to all the seekers who are listening to your talk and who will listen to it in later, because some of them will be sleeping right now.
Yes.
But thank you
I
so
think
much.
some were sleeping here as well.
Oh, no, I doubt that. I doubt that. I think maybe the presentation is too gripping to fall asleep. Anyways, thank you so much, Swamiji.